Prabhu, make Maharaj co-host. And just give a quick intro. His Holiness Bhanu Maharaj is a senior disciple of Sri Prabhupada. There in the moment 40 plus years, widely preaching, author of many wonderful books, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Gopal Champu, and many other books. Authority in deity worship, currently residing in ISKCON Chennai. So we are very fortunate to hear from him today. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. So I guess we're speaking on Nityananda.
Yes, Maharaj.
Very well. Okay, so soon we'll have the appearance day of Nityananda Prabhu. Everyone knows something about Nityananda Prabhu, I hope. Very famous. We have our Panchatattva prayer, in which Nityananda's name is mentioned. He is mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita at the very beginning, after introducing Lord Chaitanya. Nityananda is introduced as being the next important personality. So we should explain a little bit about that. Though Lord Chaitanya is glorified most, we also see glorification of 5 personalities. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda, Advaita Prabhu, Gadadhar Prabhu, and Srivas Pandit. Of course, there are many other associates also, but these 5 have been selected representing certain tattvas or certain principles, certain truths. So, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the main entity, and he is, let's say, non-different from Krishna, who was Swami Bhagavat. And his first expansion is Advaita Prabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, and his expansion from him comes Advaita Prabhu. So they're all considered to be forms of the Supreme Lord, but expansions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then we have the Shakti of the Lord in the form of Gadadhar, and then we get the principle of the Jiva, who is represented by Srivas Pandit. So here in the prayer Panchatattva Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupa Kam. Bhakta Rupa refers to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, but in the form of a devotee and the mood of a devotee. It's Bhakta Rupa. And Sarupa means the Sarupa of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or his expansion, his first expansion, is also in the form of a devotee. Of course, they're all devotees. So Bhakta Avataram, the Purusha Avatar, or Mahavishnu, is also in the form of a devotee. That's Advaitacharya. And Bhakti Shakti, the Shakti of the Lord, is in the form of a devotee, also Bhakti Shakti Kam. And then, of course, the Bhakta is there as well. So Nityananda is right next to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Krishna Lila, Krishna, of course, is the prime personality, and we call him Swayam Bhagavan. But he has many other, there's many other forms of Bhagavan also. And how are they related? They're related in the sense that they're all one Bhagavan. They're all one Supreme Lord, but they take different forms and they manifest different amounts of qualities. So that person who has, say, almost as much qualities as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or as Krishna. This is Balaram in Krishna's pastimes, and Nityananda in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So this is what they call this the expansion, the first expansion, because he has almost similar qualities. And then other expansions after that have a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. But they're all forms of the Supreme Lord. So Nityananda is identified as Balaram. who then expands in Dwarka and other places, in Vaikuntha as Shankarshan in the Chaturvyuha, Shankarshan and Vasudev and Aniruddha and Pradumna. So he is Shankarshan. And eventually he expands as Mahavishnu, who is Mahashankarshan also, who is a Purusha avatar, who expands into Garbhadaksha Vishnu, Shirdaksha Vishnu. So in glorifying Nityananda Prabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna's Kaviraj there glorifies him because he expands into these different Purusha avatars. So Balaram is significant because he is considered to be the guru for the jivas. He is, we would say, the guide for all of the jivas. And similarly, Nityananda also is in that same category of being the guide for the jivas in the material world, the spiritual world. So he has a very special significance. And Chaitanya Bhagavat, I think, is there's an emphasis on him being the Adi Guru. So that's another significance of Nityananda. He acts as the guru for everyone. As I mentioned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda are very closely associated together. And when in Navadvip, many of the pastimes involve both of them. Later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Puri. Nityananda did not stay there. He lived in Bengal and Navadvip. But yearly he would come and meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later on, where Chaitanya told him, don't come anymore, you just preach in Bengal, so he stayed there. But in any case, their association is quite close and intimate. And there's many descriptions of their pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mangala, Bhakti Ratnakara, etc. So because we have Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan pastimes, so we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu in Navadvip pastimes. So they're often paired together, as in this verse, Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gorodaye Pushpavanto Chitra Sandhatamo. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda, were like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously in the horizon of Gora to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and wonder bestow benediction upon all. So they're both forms of the Lord, and they're like considered to be like the sun and the moon, causing illumination, spiritual illumination for the jivas of the material world. So though we take Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the ultimate object of worship, we often worship them together. So therefore, in our temples, we often have deities of Gauranga and Nityananda Prabhu together. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't describe his birth so much. Other works we go to will just give more details of that. Nityananda took birth in Ekachakra Gram, which is about 6 hours drive from Mayapur, some distance away. In a Brahmana family, his father was Harai Pandit and his mother was Padmavati. And they were very affectionate towards their son, and became very satisfied with all of his wonderful pastimes. When he was a child, he would often enact with other children. He would do play, but he would enact pastimes of the various avatars. And he gained the affection of all the people of Ekachakra. But as he grew up, then something happened. he understood that he should be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but at the same time, he could not go to him at that time. He said it was not proper because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was involved in his childhood pastimes in Navadvip. So he didn't want to disturb those pastimes. As we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a child did not really reveal himself too much. And people were not aware of his powers so much. Later, when he went to Gaya and came back, and he began the Sankirtan movement, then people became aware of his great ecstasy for Krishna, and he began the Sankirtan movement, etc. And then people regarded him as very, very special. But before then, he was more or less hiding himself. So therefore, Nityananda did not go before that time. When he was young, he waited until he was grown, and he began the Sankirtan movement there. So he decided he would wait until that time. So when he is in Ekachakra, then one sannyasi came, and the sannyasi asked for the house of Harai Pandit. He went to Harai Pandit's house, and Harai Pandit, of course, being very kind and being Brahminical, he welcomed him in his house and worshipped him and fed him and gave him a place to stay, etc. And of course, his custom, then the host will tell the honored guest, what can I do for you? How can I please you? So then the sannyasi says, I have a request. Make that promise that you'll fill my request. I'll eat your food, but then you have to fill my request. So after he finished eating, then he asked to take Harai Pandit's son, Nityananda Prabhu, with him, which is pretty shocking for the father, for the mother. But nevertheless, he had made a promise to the sannyasi, so therefore he had to fulfill that promise. And Nityananda then went with the sannyasi and said goodbye to his father and mother and comforted them, but he left at that point. So then he traveled with the sannyasi for some time. And then he wandered around various places, various tirthas. Oh, what's this? So then there's this story here. This is not right here. This is the story of the Diksha here. A sannyasi came and he was wanting a place to stay. So he stayed at the house of this Brahmana, and he was also a devotee of Balaram. And then we glorified the attractive qualities and activities of Balaram. So in this way, he had feeling separation from Balaram, and the sannyasi was unsteady, and then he fell asleep. And when he was asleep, then Nityananda showed himself as Balaram to this person who was actually Lakshmipati, who was a sannyasi. And when Lakshmipati saw that form, he was completely astonished by the beauty. With his beauty defeated the pride of Cupid. His limbs derided a silver mountain. His arms reached his knees. This is arms reaching the knees is a characteristic of a great personality. This was also so for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His arms reached his knees. His chest was broad, his attractive eyes reached his ears. He had an earring in one ear. This is one particular quality of Nityananda Prabhu. He enchanted the minds of all people in the world. He had a beautiful sweet horn tucked under his arm. His body was decorated with many ornaments. He had no equal in the world. His face defeated the full moon. His words defeated nectar. He spoke to Lakshmipati gently. My heart breaks on hearing a lamentation. O Lakshmipati, Krishna is the Lord of my life. By his servant, be his servant, birth after birth. So he spoke to Lakshmipati in this way. Lakshmipati, of course, offered his respects to the Lord and said, I'm not going to make distinction between, Balaram and Krishna or whatever. And Balaram smiled. And he told that Balaram, who was actually Nityananda, and then he told that Lakshmipati that a Brahman's son has come to the same village, dressed as an avadu. That was Nityananda. He was also visiting there. And he said, you make him your disciple with this mantra. And then he gave a mantra. This is Balaram gave a mantra to Lakshmipati's ear. Lakshmipati received the mantra joyfully, and then the Lord disappeared. When the sannyasi woke up, he was waiting for this Avadut Nityananda to arrive. He saw Nityananda, and then he thought, well, this is the person he's speaking of. It's not a human being. And he gazed at Nityananda, and Nityananda, of course, offered his respects to him in great ecstasy. And the sannyasi, Lakshmipati, picked him up and embraced him. And then Nityananda requested you give me mantra, diksha, save me. So in this way, Lakshmipati is said to be the guru of Nityananda. So this is one story, which is recorded. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita there, here in the commentary, Prabhupada says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a Grihastha and Vishwambar was initiated by Ishvara Puri. Similarly, Nityananda Prabhu was initiated by Madhavendra Puri, a sannyasi. According to others, he was initiated by Lakshmipati Tirtha. And Advaita Acharya, although Grihastha, was also initiated by Madhavendra Puri. So in this way, there's a little variation. Some say Nityananda was initiated by Madhavendra Puri, and some say by Lakshmipati Tirtha. So we have two different versions here in different scriptures. Huh? In any case, same lineage. So after getting initiation, this was near Pandharpur actually, Nityananda began to wander around in various tirthas because it wasn't time for Lord Chaitanya to reveal himself. And then he met Madhavendra Puri. And they were very blissful when they met each other. And they became very great friends. Then Nityananda went to Mathura and then played with the children like as if he were Balaram. And in this way he passed some time wandering here, there in Vrindavan. And then he finally understood that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had revealed his self doing Sankirtan in Navadvip. So at that time, then he decided to go there. And he made his appearance there in Navadvip finally. And then Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met. Of course, in other pastimes, they are Krishna and Balaram, and they're eternally like that. So here in the earthly pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda, they are separate. And then finally they meet for the first time in Navadvip. The first meeting is described in various places in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Bhakti Ratnakar also. This description is taken from Bhakti Ratnakar. So Lord Chaitanya announced to all of his devotees, he said that Nityananda has come, and he began to praise him. And he said, I will see his feet by great good fortune. And then he instructed all of his devotees to go and find Nityananda Prabhu somewhere in Navadvip. And all the devotees went out and they looked and looked and looked. They couldn't find him. And they came back to Garanga and they said, we can't find Nityananda. The Lord said, okay, everyone, go to your houses and they all went home. And in the evening they gathered and they met the Lord. And then he saw, he actually went to the house of Chandrasekhar, and then he saw there, everyone saw, and Lord Chaitanya saw Nityananda Prabhu. So Lord Chaitanya knew that Nityananda Prabhu was staying in Chandrasekhar's house in Navadvip. So he went there, and there he saw his beautiful form, which is described here. He was reddish gold, most beautiful, wearing sparkling ornaments on his attractive limbs. On his waist was yellow cloth shining gloriously. On his head was a loose turban, the color of, what is that? A champaka. When he walked, his ankle bells jingles. He melted the hearts of the wide women, hearing his deep line roar that defeated the thunder god, and defeated the mad elephant of Kali Yuga. With his golden danda, he controlled the pride of Kali. He had palms attractive as red lotuses. He wore armbands, bracelets, necklaces, and bells. On his cheeks were earrings shining like the sun, falling down and rising. He spoke with care. Where is Krishna? Oops. So anyway, the two met, and they danced in ecstasy like Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan. And then the Lord, that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, told everyone to wash Nityananda's feet and put it on your head, and then you'll get pregnant. So when Lord Chaitanya gave this order, everyone became blissful, and they followed that order, and washed Nityananda's feet and put the water on their heads. And in this way, everyone became very blissful. And Nityananda wept in bliss. Yeah. So after this point, then in Navadvip, Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya would be constantly together, performing pastimes, kirtan, and other things. Huh? So one famous story is the story of Jagai and Madai, and this illustrates the great mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. As I said, Nityananda and Balaram are regarded as Adi Guru, the original gurus. So naturally, they're very merciful to the jivas. So this is one great quality of Nityananda Prabhu, his great mercy. Of course, Lord Chaitanya is very merciful, but we can say Nityananda is even more merciful. So for some time, the kirtan was confined, private, but then Lord Chaitanya ordered everybody to go out and tell everyone to chant the holy name. So then Nityananda and Haridas went out, because Lord Chaitanya had said, you should beg everyone to worship Krishna, go house to house. So of course, the nice people were very blissful, and the demonic people began to make fun of all the devotees. And when Jagai and Madai saw this, that Nityananda and Haridas were telling everyone chant the holy name and worship Krishna, etc., they were very, very angry. And they said, beat these rascals, beat these rascals. And they ran and tried to catch Nityananda and Haridas, and they had to run away. So very, very sinful persons. Not only they criticized, but then they attacked, and they actually injured Nityananda on the head by throwing a piece of broken pot. So they were very famous as being very degraded, but Nityananda and Haridas, having faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wanted to preach the holy name, so they did that in spite of the presence of Jagai Madai. But Jagai Madai reacted in this way, and they finally, Nityananda got injured. So offense, of course, is we can criticize, that is sadhu ninda, but even worse than that is injury. So this is what Jagai and Madai finally ended up doing. They injured Nityananda Prabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he heard about this, he was very angry, naturally, because Nityananda is like his brother. So then he was going to invoke his Sudarshan Chakra to annihilate them. But Nityananda intervened and told him to withdraw his Sudarshan Chakra. And this way, he reminded Lord Chaitanya that, you've come to save the most fallen people. So these people are very fallen, so you should not kill them. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then became very merciful, and the brothers were astonished at the tolerance of Nityananda and how he had interceded in their behalf, and their hearts melted. And then they got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they became devotees. So after this, they actually became very famous devotees. And they actually stayed at the ghat, and they would clean the ghat and take care of all the clothes of the people who were there when they're bathing, etc. So there's a famous Madai Ghat on the bank of the Ganga, which was taken care of by Madai. So they became very famous as devotees, and everybody was astonished by the great transformation of these two brothers. So they became the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this way, by the mercy of Nityananda, or the intervention of Nityananda Prabhu, so this shows his great mercy. So Nityananda gathered some followers, very loyal devotees, and when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Puri and stayed there, Nityananda stayed in Bengal, and along with his followers, he would go from village to village, town to town, doing kirtan and preaching. So he had some famous followers. 12 were very famous. These are mentioned here. And they are identified as cowherd boys in Vrindavan. So Sudama became Sundarananda, Vasudama was Dhananjaya, Subal was Gauridas, Mahabala was Kamalakara Pippalai, Subahu was Udarandatta, Mahabaha, Bahu was Mahesh, Stoka Krishna and Krishna's pastimes was Purushottam Das, Dama was Purushottam Datta, Labanga was Kala Krishna Das, Arjuna was Parameshwari Das, and Madhu Mangala became Sridhar. So these are called the Dwadasa Gopals, or the 12 cowherd boys. So and Sridama became Abhiram Thakur. So in this way, 12 associates of Nityananda were actually 12 cowherd boys. And they exchange with each other like cowherd boys, that is in Sakya. So therefore, there's a little bit of Sakya Rasa present within Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Also, even though Madhurya Rasa is the most prominent, we have some relationships in Sakya with Nityananda Prabhu particularly. Of course, the relationship between Balaram and Krishna also is Sakya, but between these Dwadasa Gopals and Nityananda, there's also a Sakya type relationship. And this is illustrated, for instance, in the Hani Hari pastimes, where Nityananda Prabhu, when he ordered the Raghunath Das to feed all the people with chira in a big festival, then Nityananda sat down with all of his devotees, and they had a picnic. That's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. They sat under, there was say elevated platform under a tree. So Nityananda and some of the leading devotees sat on that platform, and then they began to eat their chira and daya. And it's described how Lord Chaitanya was called by Nanda, mentally called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Puri, and then he began to feed him. Of course, no one could really see that, but Nityananda was doing this, and he was joking with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and feeding Nityananda Prabhu. And of course, Chaitanya was feeding Nityananda, Nityananda was feeding him. So this is very similar to the pastimes in Vrindavan, where we see boys would offer, cowherd boys would offer Krishna their prasadam, or their food they brought from their house, and Krishna would offer them what he had brought from his house, and they would exchange food in this way and joke. So in this pastime, we see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu were joking together very nicely. And Nityananda was very, very happy with this. So this is like the picnics that we see in Vrindavan with Krishna and the cowherd boys. One of the instances, of course, is when just before Brahma stole all the calves. So there's a very nice description how Krishna sat down with thousands and thousands of cowherd boys, and they all opened up their packets of goodies brought by their mothers, prepared by their mothers, and then they began to inspect it and show it off to their friends. And they sat down and they made leaf plates, and then they put all their food on there, and then they began to eat and feed each other, joke, etc., and in a very, very joyful way. So in the Panihati pastime, we see this similarly taking place. So in that way, we have an illustration of Nityananda having pastimes with his various devotees, who were actually many in Sakya Rasa. As I mentioned, the main rasa in the Gaudiya Sampradaya is Madhurya Rasa. Lord Chaitanya himself, in the mood of Radha, acting as a devotee, worshiping Krishna, and then he teaches about Madhurya Rasa as the highest rasa. So this is the main rasa, and therefore we have temples with the main deity being Radha and Krishna. But there is room for other rasas, and at one time, this Sakya Rasa between, which was manifested between the Dwadasa Gopals and Nityananda, was practiced for some time. And just as we have Raganuga Bhakti for Krishna, with the mood of the gopis worshiping Krishna, so we had Raganuga Bhakti in Sakya Rasa, and some devotees were following that. And so they would meditate on the pastimes of Sudama and Sridama, etc., Subal, with Krishna, and with Balaram, etc. So in this way, we have a little bit of a movement of Sakya Rasa within our Sampradaya also. And one manual was written to cultivate the Sakya Rasa among the devotees. So that is there. So, Preo Bhakti Rasarnava, written by Nayanananda Das. So later it seemed to have died out, so we don't have any people practicing it today. But it was there at one time. Anyway, Nityananda was therefore very prominent, and he followed the order of Lord Chaitanya, and he preached very, very strongly throughout Bengal, fearlessly, and established the Sankirtan movement there, such that even today we see that all the villages in Bengal, they know about Lord Chaitanya and Harinam because of Nityananda. He preached so strongly there that everybody became aware and everybody began to practice. So this was the strong preaching of Nityananda Prabhu. Later, of course, Nityananda got married to Vasudha and Janava, and then Vasudha had one child called Birachandra, and he also became a great preacher. because one daughter was there, Ganga Devi also. But Virajendra became a great devotee also, and he began to preach and carry on the preaching of Nityananda in another generation. So this continued that line of preaching. And of course, Janava, who was his wife after Nityananda's disappearance, then Janava Devi also, we could say, wasn't preaching in a direct way because she was a woman, etc. But she carried on the preaching movement, and she initiated many people. And she went to Vrindavan with a whole group of followers, walked all the way there, walked all the way back, etc. And attended this great festival that was held in Ketari Gram with Narottam Das Thakur and others. So even after Nityananda Prabhu's influence was felt through Janava and through Virajendra, who carried on that tradition. So in this way, his influence was lasted for some time there. His disappearance is not mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but by tradition, for instance, in Ekchakra itself, they say that he merged into the body of Bunkam Rai deity in Ekchakra. That's the story. Somehow he went through Ekchakra and there he merged into the deity form. So this is the story they tell, but we don't have any authorized scriptural statement like that. But this is the tradition and the among the people of Ekchakra. So as I said, we worship Nityananda like we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have the deities, Gaur-Nitai deities, many people have in the houses also. And Nityananda represents the merciful aspect. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also said that if you want to worship me, you have to go through Nityananda first. So therefore, before worshiping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we worship Nityananda Prabhu. So therefore, it's very convenient for us to have deities of Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are non-different from Balaram and Krishna. So with the worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we also have the worship of Nityananda Prabhu, very, very important. Okay, Hare Krishna. Any question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. Let me unmute everyone. Okay. You can raise your hand or you can unmute anyone who has questions. Maharaj, if you can elaborate on the point I think you mentioned about the rasa, how devotees should take it when they are practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, so that, because sometimes we may have some kind of understanding or we heard or some Siddha Swarupa, this and that. So if we can elaborate on that, that will be nice.
Yeah. Well, of course, if we look in Chaitanya Charitamrita there, it is said that, of course, there is Vaidhi sadhana and there's Raganuga sadhana. But if you want to realize Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, or any form of Krishna and Vrindavan, you eventually have to follow the Raganuga sadhana. Now, the logic of that is that Raganuga is following the mood of the people of Vrindavan. Vaidhi Bhakti is following the mood of Vaikuntha, or at most Dwarka. So if you worship Krishna according to Vaidhi Bhakti only, get very attached to that, which is very formal, you may end up realizing Krishna and Dwarka. Whereas if you worship in the mood of Raganuga, then that's favorable for developing and entering into the pastimes in Vrindavan. So it's basically the mood behind the worship of Krishna, which will determine which realization we get and then which place we go to. So therefore he says that you attain Vrindavan in the spiritual world by Raganuga sadhana. So that means that the worship is not so formal and more spontaneous, and the reverence does not become too profound that it interferes with our affectionate relationship with Krishna. Huh? That is the basic idea behind Raganuga, is following after the Ragatmaka Bhaktas, or the eternal devotees and Krishna's pastimes. But it is a sadhana. So one does similar activities, association, hearing, deity worship, chanting, etc., etc. In that sense, same. Mood is different, little different, because of the idea that we're trying to develop a very spontaneous attitude. However, there is also an aspect which requires more mental practice, because one should meditate on the pastimes and also serve by identifying oneself with a spiritual body, take a spiritual form and serve in that body. So instead of serving as I am in this particular body, we meditate on serving in a spiritual body in the spiritual world. Even though we're not perfect, we're not in bhava and prema, we haven't realized Krishna, but we practice as if we were having a real spiritual body and we're serving Krishna in that spiritual body. So this helps us develop that right mood. So that's what we call the Sarup Siddhi and all this, the practice of Siddha Pranali, etc. Of course, this is not mentioned directly by Rupa Goswami. He talks about meditating on your, Sarup, etc. But that whole practice of getting a form and with the color of the cloth and your service, etc., that was developed separately by Dhyan Chandra and Gopal Guru Goswami in Puri, a little bit after Lord Chaitanya, and that became more, practice at that time afterwards. Spread to Bengal and then probably Vrindavan. This is what the Babajis in Radhakut practice also. So, and of course, many of the Goswamis in Bengal also have the same process, so they get the Sarup from the Guru with identifying their Sarup as a Manjari with a name and service, etc. So that becomes part of their sadhana. But Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur and Raghava Chandrika says that you could get your Sarup through your Guru or through another great devotee, or it could manifest on its own. So it's not necessarily you have to go through that particular Siddha Pranali type formality of through a Guru to practice that form. Furthermore, Jiva Goswami says, if you cannot practice Raganuga because it does require more mental effort, with meditation, etc., meditating in a spiritual form, he says you can take elements of that and mix it with Vaidhi Bhakti, so you can have a combination for some time also, where you take some elements of Raganuga and some of Vaidhi Bhakti and practice that. Up until Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the whole Gaudiya movement was basically Raganuga, and they would carry on like that. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not so enthusiastic to carry on that way, because he saw that many of the people who were claiming to be followers of Raganuga ended up in a very degraded state, because they were very lax in following basic principles. So therefore, he was hesitant to immediately have everyone practice Raganuga Bhakti. So therefore, he put a little more emphasis on rules and regulations, etc. It's not that he discouraged or forbade or anything, but he just emphasized the Vaidhi aspect. And this is the same with Srila Prabhupada. So we emphasize that. But even with what we call our so-called Vaidhi Bhakti, there's actually a mixture there also, because we're not worshiping Vishnu, we're not worshiping Krishna and Dwarka, we're worshiping Krishna and Vrindavan, or Radha Krishna and Vrindavan form. That's one thing. Secondly, we're also hearing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan. We hear the Bhagavatam every day. We hear the pastimes of Krishna. We celebrate the festivals of Krishna like Govardhan pastime, whatever, different, events and Krishna's pastimes. So in that sense, it's headed towards Raganuga anyway. And even when we do our deity worship, it is not the same Vaidhi Bhakti that we'll find in other sampradayas, like let's say the Ramanuja Sampradaya or the Madhva Sampradaya, which is quite rigid in following their various rules, etc. So our deity worship does have standards and rules and regulations, but they're much more flexible than those rules in other sampradayas. So in that sense, it's not quite Vaidhi Bhakti as other sampradayas will call Vaidhi Bhakti, like the Madhvas or something like that. It's quite different. So it's not real Vaidhi Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti. It's kind of a mixture of that. And if we advance, then we want to go internal, then we could start practicing, serving internally Radha and Krishna with a spiritual body or whatever. But for now, at least we start with what is given by Srila Prabhupada and follow that as best we can. If we do that very nicely, then we can go on to other things.
Thank you, Maharaj. Nice, wonderful explanation. Dear devotees, anyone has questions? Yeah, looks like. Amrita and Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, so you just nicely explained Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. So for a sadhaka, should he or she aspire for Raganuga Bhakti, or just focus on your Vaidhi Bhakti and then gradually it will just happen where spontaneously we can serve?
Well, as I say, what we are following is not actually just Vaidhi Bhakti. It's kind of a mixture in itself, what we follow. But yes, ultimately, as if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita very closely there, it says definitely the one to get to Krishna, you have to follow Raganuga. So that can be our aim. It's still sadhana. It's nothing beyond sadhana. It's just another type of sadhana. And with that, even Raganuga, we should also understand it's not we give up all the rules and regulations and do anything we want. No, it is also governed by certain rules, but it's the mood in our service to Krishna. It's very more spontaneous, and we're not seeing Krishna as Supreme Lord, as a fearful person, etc. We're trying to treat him as in a very friendly, intimate way. So that's the idea with Raganuga. So we can at least cultivate that part now, even if we are, on a lower level and we're still have a little bit of Vaidhi Bhakti influence, we can cultivate that intimate, affectionate relationship with Krishna. So that could be the start of our Raganuga.
A follow-up, Maharaj.
Yeah.
So one of the instructions is that when we are doing deity service, we should always be very careful, and it should be in a mood of awe and reverence, and not just do it casually or mechanically. Do it with meaningful thoughtfulness. But then with this kind of a understanding that this is my aspiration to develop spontaneous love for Krishna, won't it dilute this awe and reverence, and won't I run the risk, Maharaj, of then, how do I know that I'm progressing or?
Yeah. So if we emphasize too much the Vaidhi, and you have to do the rules, you have to be reverent, you have to be fearful, you have to do everything according to the scripture, you can't break any rules. Ultimately, that also will also, let's say, discourage even the bhakti. In other words, it becomes mechanical that way also, simply by emphasizing the rules. So we do everything by the rule, but we lose our devotion in the process. That's also useless. So we have to strike a little balance there, where we keep the devotion and we do keep the rules, so that we can maintain control of the senses, etc. And we come up to a certain standard, and the deities also meet a certain standard. So to that extent, we're following Vaidhi Bhakti. But we should not let that interfere with the development of our devotion So in Vaidhi Bhakti also, it's also Bhakti. It's not just Vaidhi, it's Vaidhi Bhakti. So in that also, the idea is we're trying to please Krishna, even in Vaidhi Bhakti, but the emphasis is more upon we're following the rules and regulations. So as I said in the beginning, yes, we do have to be careful and regulate our senses, etc. So therefore, we have an emphasis on that Vaidhi. But as I said, we do have to emphasize also the devotional part. And with that devotional part, at least there, we can start emphasizing also the intimate affection, which is the affection in Raganuga or in Vrindavan itself. As we see, let's say, the difference between worshiping Krishna in Dwarka, or let's say Vasudeva and Devaki worshiping Krishna in Dwarka, and Mother Yasoda and Nanda worshiping Krishna in Vrindavan. What's the difference? The difference is that Vasudeva and Devaki see Krishna as Supreme Lord, and therefore their Vatsalya Rasa is diluted by the idea he's God. So there's certain things I cannot do with Krishna and Balaram. Whereas Mother Yasoda and Nanda don't see Krishna as God, so they treat him as their child, and Mother Yasoda will try to tie him up or try to punish him or whatever. Whereas Vasudeva and Devaki would never think of doing such a thing. So the mood is a little bit different. So we have to, cultivate that and aspire for that in our service to Krishna also. Though, as I said, we can't go overboard and not follow any rules and regulations. And because I'm doing Raganuga Bhakti, I'll dress Krishna in anything I want because that's my raga. And then we dress Krishna as Santa Claus or something. That you can't do things like that. So we do have our restrictions on how far we go in expressing ourselves with Krishna also. So that's why we have a little bit of a wariness there, or a little bit of warning. Don't get too much carried away by your feelings, etc. Like that. But anyway, yes, we have to balance it out carefully. Not too much Vaidhi, because it ends up that we even just squash any devotion that's there. And then if we go overboard on the raga, when we're not really qualified for it, we may do all sorts of outlandish things which aren't even according to any scripture or any pleasing to our acharyas at all. So we have to be careful of that also.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
It's a question, though, a very valid question, and other people outside of ISKCON or outside of Gaudiya Math, they would also attack us as being, you're not doing any following Lord Chaitanya's instruction, you're not doing Raganuga Bhakti, you're not doing this. Or of course, the Babajis will also criticize in this way. It's all bogus society, whatever, you're all Vaidhi Bhakti, etc., etc., etc. But so therefore, we are following also the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and ultimately in the mood of Raganuga, but we're making a preparatory step because we're not really qualified for that. But we cannot just get fixed on the Vaidhi aspect and lose that. We can, of course, but we should not lose the devotion in the process. But if we do become fixed in Vaidhi and we progress up to Bhava stage, then Vishnu Chakravarti says, you wouldn't go to Dwarka because we're worshiping Radha Krishna, Vrindavan Krishna for, we're not worshiping Dwarka and Rukmini, etc. So we go to Vrindavan, but we're not going to go to the real Vrindavan. We'll go to something called Aishwarya Goloka, which is like Goloka, but mood of Aishwarya. So therefore, you have Radha Krishna there, you have the cowherd boys there, Krishna goes out and herds cows every day, but the mood of all of the different devotees is, Krishna is kind of like the Lord. He's, so there's a little reverence in their worship there, but Krishna's a cowherd boy. So reverence to Krishna, cowherd boy, and you serve him with some sort of thing, reverence. So it's better than Dwarka, but it's not as good as no reverence, where you just see Krishna as cowherd boy.
Very nice, Maharaj. Cleared the doubt. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dhanva Pranam. Prabhu, can I ask a question or somebody?
Go ahead.
Dhanwar Pranam Maharaj, all glories to you, my obeisances in Prabhupada. Maharaj, I have a question related to that the deity worship, the local. Like Maharaj, I am from Mathura, and in the local we do all the Gopal worship, the Thakurji. Even so, one of the ISKCON devotee Maharaj asked me that the local people, are they chanting or they follow this process? I said no. So how to understand that, Maharaj? Like their bhakti, like we think like Krishna. You mentioned that our Thakurji means our family member. He's our child. We don't in the mood like a Krishna is a god, or that mood we worship like a child. We do, that before sleeping, the milk, when back up, give the milk, like a treat as a child. So how to understand, Maharaj, ISKCON perspective? Some people ask like a devotee, why they don't chanting, why they don't keep the Gaura Nitai. So that kind of thing, but how to understand that?
Okay, well, just one point here is that actually there's a whole sampradaya of Raganuga, that is the Vallabha sampradaya, basically is Raganuga. Pushti Marga is called in Nectar Devotion. Rupa Goswami mentions that the Pushti Marga is Raganuga. So they worship, they have Raganuga and Vatsalya Rasa for Krishna, that whole sampradaya in Gujarat, so they're thinking Krishna as their child, and they cook for him and boil the milk up and everything like that. Yeah, so in Mathura also many people will be in that mood. But we do have to be careful that we do have some sort of standards, especially in temples, public temples. We do have some sort of standards. So in ISKCON we have a Pancharatric standard. So therefore we have, standard offerings, standard timings, standard artis, etc., like that. Whereas probably, I don't know who you're referring to, but probably they may not have such standards. It's a little more, based on day-to-day needs and desires, etc., that they'll do their seva for the deity. But if it's a temple, generally we try to follow Pancharatric standards, so therefore they're more or less fixed. In that sense, it's a little more Vaidhi involved.
Yeah, Maharaj, just one incident I want to sharing, like even like that the family members don't follow this the process and all, but some incident, Maharaj, I know my childhood, like even after that also, sometime like if some family member forget to offer the milk in something, but other family member would come to know, oh, you did not offer the milk last night, Thakurji. Then the member who was responsible, he realized, yes, I forget. So that kind of incident, Maharaj, I remember my childhood, that keep on happening also, like so that much love though we have, but to following the process point of view, that's why I see this is not that there.
Yeah. So that's why I'd say it's good to be very spontaneous, but we may become very irregular in doing so, and then maybe a little casual, and then we forget and whatever like that. So that's the danger of that type of mood also. So therefore, that's what we do have in worshiping the deity, particularly. We have some, Pancharatric standards and whatever, and things like that. Of course, we'll find in the Vallabha Sampradaya, in the temples, like in Srinath Temple, which is based on Raganuga, but it's a public temple, and quite elaborate worship, etc. And they do have standards and they do have rules, etc. But they also do have that spontaneous mood in relation to the deity. Yeah, so they don't forget that in there, even though they do follow rules and whatever. So we have to have a good balance there. We can't just have no rules, but we have rules, but we also try to keep up that spontaneous mood.
So Maharaj, ISKCON point of view, like worshipping the form, the Krishna is the Gopalji, is the standard or recommended, or how's that?
The form?
The Gopalji, like we worship the Krishna as the child, like we call the Gopalji.
Oh, and then like a Laddu Gopal, like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, that's more in the Vatsalya mode. Huh? So we generally encourage people, and Lord Chaitanya also encourages people to worship Radha Krishna, which is in Kaishor form. So that's why we generally don't have the baby form. We have the adult form. Some people do have the baby form. If they get very attached to that, then they may develop Vatsalya rasa. Nothing wrong with that also. It's possible. We don't have any examples to follow in our particular line for that. As I said, for Sakya rasa, we do have some manuals written for that, but we don't have anything for Vatsalya rasa. But there is a lot of Vatsalya rasa in the Vallabha Sampradaya from Gujarat with Srinathji, etc. So one could probably follow something from that, maybe take some of the rules from that.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah. So as I said, the main rasa is Madhurya rasa within our Sampradaya, but there could be other rasas also. So Sakya rasa is there. And even Murari Gupta, he was an Anupam, brother of the Rupa and Sanatan. They were worshippers of Ramchandra, of all things. And Lord Chaitanya permitted that also. So we may get some variations, people within our Sampradaya who may be worshiping someone else also even, and may have a different rasa or whatever. So that's also possible. But mainly Lord Chaitanya is encouraging Madhurya rasa as the highest, but there may be exceptions because jivas are individuals.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard, like that from His Holiness Reverity Nandan Maharaj, long back, is sharing his pastime. And he asked Prabhupada, is everybody in ISKCON going back to Golok Vrindavan and having this same mood or rasas of Golok Vrindavan? Prabhupada said, not necessarily, just like in Murari Gupta and Chaitanya Leela. So there will be some devotees will be going to Ayodhya and others. So
and of course, Srivas Pandits and Dasya Rasa. Nityanandas and Sakya Rasa. Okay, fine then.
Thank you very much.
Haribol, John.
Madhubhat Prabhu, are there?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for your wonderful class.
Haribol.
Pastimes of Lord Nityananda.
Okay, Haribol.
Well, Hare Krishna.
The quick announcements. The Sunday feast program is on. Please join 5:30 to 9 the evening. Next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday is Ekadasi, Sattila Ekadasi. It's coming up. And and Lord Nityananda Trayodasi is on February 2nd, Thursday. So we'll be celebrating at our temple. Please join. We'll let you know the exact details, the timing, and the events. And Govindas is on. You can order your Govindas special, govindasnj.com on the website. And every Saturday we have buffet from 12 to 3.
12 to 4.
12 to 4. So I think with that we can conclude unless anyone has any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Conclude Mancha Kalpatarubhasya.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Vaishnavendra.